Today I'm going to talk about the use of library ebooks in place of textbooks at U of A, and I know this is kind of geared toward faculty outreach, so I'm going to talk about our process as it is now, but instead of focusing on the acquisition or like the processing of the bookstore list, I'm going to focus on kind of the three communication outputs that we do as part of our process that would be considered outreach. And then if I have time, maybe I'll get into the challenges associated with outreach based on our current workflow, but we might save that for questions. So for the past few years, we've been working with our bookstore, and each semester they send us the list, which is the list of faculty-requested textbooks. We usually get this, it's a challenge trying to figure out the best time to get it. Like, do we want to wait till the last minute where it's the, has the most content on the list, or do we want to get it to have enough time to actually process it? So we kind of hit in between somewhere, between being too late and not soon enough. Is that the same thing? I don't know. But anyway, our list has generally around 2,000 titles on it, and so we go through that and try to find the books that we either own or could purchase as part of our acquisitions model. We'd like to limit it to unlimited user ebooks, but right now we don't. We include multi-user books as part of our program, so it might be a little bit different from, how many of your guys' institutions do similar things at your libraries? Cool, so I'd like to hear from you guys about that. So after we go through the list and identify those ebooks, we do kind of three ways of letting faculty and students know that these are available. The first one is we put a link to the ebook on the students' book list, as it's called, which is essentially their list of books that are on the U of A's bookstore's website, but it's based on individual logins, so it'll populate the student's view based on the classes they're enrolled in. So you can't really see it, but there's a little link that says, check the library for this ebook, and that checks against our database of titles that we identified. It goes to this intermediary page that's not our catalog record, because we wanted to make sure that the licensing was clear to a non-library person, like a student, because we found our records were pretty spotty in terms of describing the license for each ebook. So they get taken to this page, which is like a basic link to the book, and then it says how many people can use it at one time. So that's the link from this page here. Our second kind of output in terms of letting faculty and students know is integration into D2L, which is the course management system that we use at U of A. We have it's called the Library Tools tab, which is our integration, the library's integration into each course page in D2L. So we kind of use that as like a back door to go in and put links to the course ebooks into every single course that has one available. So we do this all on our side, like the faculty doesn't have to link the ebook. We just let them know that it's there. They just have to check their Library Tools tab. And then, I don't know how to do it on time, but okay. Yeah. Okay. So then the final thing we do, as kind of the final step, is we generate an email to all the faculty for which we do have a library ebook available. Because there's, how many, 15 liaisons in our team, Cheryl? There's 12 or 15. And it can be like 250 courses. That's a lot of emails for each of us to send out individually. So if time allows, we have our developers generate this like auto-populated email template. So it puts in the link to the ebook, the title, and it says check your Library Tools tab in D2L. So that's kind of what the template looks like. And so right now, like our outreach is kind of what I described. It's pretty reactive. It's just based on what we can get from that list. If we changed our workflow so that we had allowed for a little bit more time for back and forth communication with faculty, offering alternatives, seeing if they really wanted to use it, that would be kind of our ideal. But as it stands, we're pretty constrained by the time limits on how, like we want to get this to them by the first week of class, so we don't have a lot of back and forth time. But this is just an example of 3 of the titles that continue to show up on our lists and the savings that could be potentially realized if students use these books instead of purchasing. And this is kind of just a general summary of what we've been able to provide over the last few years. Again, because we don't know for sure if these books are being used in lieu of actually purchasing a print textbook, we just can estimate potential savings. But I think that's me. I'm going to stop right there.
So I'm Cheryl Cuillier, I'm a liaison librarian with Niamh, and I also coordinate our open educational resource initiatives. And like Niamh said, we kind of used it as a multi-pronged approach when a faculty member comes to us and says, hey, I'm considering replacing my commercial textbook with something that's either free or low cost. And so we'll go through the options with the faculty. Oops. And I start with open educational resources, which are either in the public domain or they come with a Creative Commons license that allows them, free download, sharing, translation, customization. And I start with the OER because of the customization. That's an option that the library licensed ebooks don't allow for. So if we can find OER, that's great. It's also easier to estimate savings based on OER. We use a figure from the Open Textbook Network of $100 per student per book. In talking with Niamh and our department head about, how do you estimate savings for ebooks when the price ranges are so wide? So it is easier with the ebooks. And then, if we can't find an OER, then we'll look for library licensed ebooks or journal articles or book chapters. And then another option that we've started publicizing to campus is this inclusive access model with the bookstores. And they just started piloting this in fall 2016. And so every student is provided digital access to the commercial textbook on day one of class. They have until the drop add date to opt out. If they don't opt out, it's automatically billed to their bursar's account, so they can use financial aid to pay for it. The opt-out rate has been about 4%, and so much lower than probably the number of students who are choosing voluntarily to buy the course text. When I went to the textbook affordability conference in 2016, a lot of the publishers were there and saying, we're gonna, in exchange for this potentially higher sell-through, we're gonna lower the cost of the book by 50% or more. In reality, we haven't seen that level of discounting, except in the very large courses. In one case, they were only able to negotiate with the publishers for a $2 discount on the book. So that's something we're kind of keeping an eye on is the pricing, but I think we're going to see more of that. So just to kind of make you aware, you'll probably hear more about that on your campuses. Let's see. As far as comments from faculty and administrators, the first four kind of apply to OER specifically. So, if it's free, how can it be any good? There are concerns about peer review, and we're an OpenStax partner. OpenStax is a provider out of Rice University, heavily funded by the Gates and Hewlett Foundations. Fabulous, fabulous textbooks, super high quality. They're spending a lot of money on the ancillary materials and the everything that a faculty member would want. And so, we let them know that books from OpenStax and OpenSUNY are formally peer-reviewed. We let them know that there's the Open Textbook Library, which is a project out of the University of Minnesota that has a lot of faculty reviews. The Merlot repository also has a lot of faculty reviews, so they can see what their peers say about the book. Let's see. The Z degrees are kind of a new thing too. They're zero-cost textbook degrees. And recently our local community college got a grant to create an AA degree based only on OpenStax textbooks. But our vice provost for academic affairs heard about it and was a little concerned, along with our transfer center coordinator. She was saying, what about these free textbooks, and are those credits going to transfer, and what are faculty going to think about these? So they do have questions about the quality. And what I've done is purchased a set of the print OpenStax books to go and take to meetings. And inevitably, every time I present or show them, I'll hear, oh, this is a real textbook. Yeah, it's a real, they're spending a lot of money to produce these. So it's helpful to have the print to show people so they can kind of wrap their mind around what OER is. It's still kind of a new concept. The ancillary materials, OpenStax has been very good about partnering with startups for the interactive homework banks at a low cost. So that competes with the course in a box is very appealing to the time-crunched professor who just, they found out a week before they're supposed to teach the class that this is what they're teaching, and they want everything ready to go. Can't find anything in my subject area. We work one-on-one with professors as far as options, and we'll give them links to, here's content, ebooks from our catalog, here are OER options, here are other options you can look at. The Merlot repository has a really nice ISBN search tool. So if you have a commercial textbook that you like, you can pop in that number and it will show you open alternatives. So that's a really cool thing.
That's Merlot?
Merlot, yeah, the Merlot. I just found out about it last week at a conference.
Like wine. Merlot like wine?
Merlot 2, yeah.
MER.
And also if you go to the Cal State Affordable Course, Affordable Learning Solutions site, it's also on that site. Yeah, but that's great. One of our faculty just found an open textbook that wasn't in the open textbook library because it wasn't a printable textbook. It was fully online, but that's what she's going to be using. So yeah, so just kind of letting people know what their options are. Faculty's academic freedom, hear about that a lot. And I'm always really careful to emphasize to faculty that they are the subject matter experts. They have complete academic freedom to choose the best course materials for their course. And OER and the library ebooks just give them additional options. They're not limited to the commercial content. As far as these last two, hard to use, it's pain. Sometimes all I can do is kind of nod and agree. Yeah, I feel your pain. But I do emphasize that we've done studies with students on their preferences between e and print, and the students do love the searchability functions of ebooks. They love the portability, and so emphasizing that, emphasizing the advantages of all students having day one access, framing it as a social justice issue. It appeals to a lot of faculty. It's not just the kids who can afford the textbooks on day one of class. The entire class is ready to go from day one. They're not waiting for, their discount book to arrive from Amazon Marketplace that will take 3 weeks. And, my son's a college student. He's tried all kinds of strategies for lowering textbook costs. Students will pirate. We don't want to encourage that. They'll try and share. They'll use older editions, so the homework problems may not line up. They'll use foreign editions again. They're creative, but these are all hurting their chances at academic success, and none of us wants to see that. So these numbers, when I do presentations to faculty, I show them these numbers. This is from a 2016 survey by the Florida Virtual Campus. They did the survey in 2012, and these numbers actually, a lot of them went up. So, these are all things we don't want to see. They all hurt student success. As far as outreach to faculty, we've used this poster campaign this month for Open Education Month, and we've got a variety of events planned. We're going to do a series of these posters, and it's kind of based off the ALA Library Reads posters. So they're just templates where we could just pop in the faculty's photo. We recruited various professors who are using OER, but the next round we can easily use professors who are using library ebooks, because students, as long as they're getting the book for free, they really don't care where it's coming from, whether it's OpenStax or the library ebook. They just want it for free. In these faculty, they were all excited to share these on social media, and we've used them in media campaigns. I've got them on the OER website that we've set up. We've also tried running this ad in the student newspaper. So the College of the Canyons was nice enough to let us, they designed a poster based on this concept. And so we threw in a few more puns that we got from people in the Open Textbook Network. And yeah, so that's kind of what we do for faculty outreach.
So no cats in mine, unfortunately, but I'm from LSU, like I said, and we, for our course affordability initiatives, we also have a variety of different projects going on, like OERs and open textbooks, but this is mainly focusing on our licensed material being used in classes. I'm going to overview why we do this and how we talk to faculty about it, the tool that we have for students, the public-facing tool for our students, and then a tool for faculty so that they can proactively select titles for course use. So first, I think it's important to explain why we as LSU got involved in this project. And we're involved in this space for multiple reasons, and we also share these motivations with faculty as a way to talk to them, to demonstrate both the library role, why we're the one talking to them, and the need on our campus. So first is that textbook costs, that's a major pain point for our students. If you look at research, you see that textbook costs have risen faster in price than any other commercial product. And yet this is something that we as librarians and faculty can have an impact on. Students at LSU are likely paying more in tuition or room and board, but that's not something that we as faculty or librarians influence. So that's one of the reasons. The other reason is that we talk about students paying twice when we have an ebook in our collection, materials that we've licensed, and then the student also goes and buys a copy of it for a class. These projects really capitalize on librarians' skills in discovery, content curation, access, information description, teaching and learning. All of these things come into play when we're talking about course materials. A criticism at times is that projects like this will shift the burden, the cost from the student to the institution. Are we now just paying for something that students were paying for? And that is, true. We will intentionally now buy books as ebooks that are being used in a class, and sometimes that book as an ebook could be $1,000 or more. This is an expensive ebook. But we also know that we are more in place able to deal with that than a student. And a student in that class, the new book might be $65, so less than $1,000. But when it's spread out across the entire class, we really see a good return on that. And then I do think that, especially at LSU, there is an increasing sense of urgency around these issues. Sometimes when I talk to faculty, especially a year or two ago, about textbook affordability, I did get a lot of faculty that would say, well, my book is not that much money. My book is used in 2 semesters. When I was a student, I bought books. This is part of the way we do business. And I do really see that starting to change on my campus, and to some degree that's because we've had more and more hardships in Louisiana. We had a flood that impacted a lot of students in Baton Rouge. We've had a kind of a crisis with our state scholarship funding that a lot of students receive, but all of these have brought affordability to the forefront of our conversation, and I do see faculty now more engaged in this issue. So that's some of the reasons why we're involved in this space and now what we're doing. So we had for a long time, a period of time, had DDA plans, and we're buying ebooks through that DDA plan. And what we found, especially people like me who work at the reference desk, is we did see a lot of usability complaints surrounding those DDA books and confusion on them. And so at one point we decided to discontinue those plans and instead buy large ebook collections like from Wiley, Springer, Project Muse that had these Charlotte Initiative 3 principles surrounding them. Sometimes when we talk to other libraries in the state, Teri is also from Louisiana, I do know that as the state flagship institution, we're really poised to make that kind of decision to buy those large ebook packages, but it has enabled us to do the project that we now do with this e-textbook initiative. So what is that project? So what we were doing is we were buying ebooks in this format that had that unlimited user license, and we thought, well, let's see what the overlap is with courses. So we had been in a place where we were already getting the bookstore list of textbook adoptions, and we were getting that because we wanted to prevent students from interlibrary loaning required textbooks. So we already had this on our hands, but we nonetheless asked them and said, can we see if there are matches between this and our ebooks? And so we got that information from our bookstore. It's a Barnes & Noble bookstore. And our systems librarian, Mike Waugh, developed this process for, first he takes the bookstore list, which is a PDF, and he uses regular expressions to pull out the ISBNs in this PDF. He does the same with publisher lists that you can download from publisher sites, their title lists, and pulls out the ISBNs from there. Then with that bookstore ISBN pool, he goes and finds multiple ISBNs using OCLC's XISBN web server. So now he has a bigger quantity of bookstore ISBNs, kind of all of the varieties of how those ISBNs could be. And he then uses a Python script to find matches between that bookstore pool and the publisher list. And then he sends those matches to me, and I confirm what we already have and what we can buy. So this script, there was a period in time where we were kind of like going over all of this visually and trying to find matches, and this saves us tons of time. I think that is all on GitHub. He has to use his OCLC key or something like that. So that is one limitation of sharing it, but if you want that GitHub information, just let me know. But I just want to briefly talk about how we do that. So all of that comes to this student-facing page, which is a Drupal page. Dave Comer, our web librarian, created a custom content type in Drupal. And this is our main public-facing page for the e-textbooks project overall. We've gone through an iterative process where we really refined this page through usability testing with students to make sure that the way it searches is the way that is most intuitive to them. So this is where it began, just for comparison. And this is where it is now. So the reason I'm mentioning this, not only to kind of frame our program, but in terms of faculty outreach, is that when we email them, a faculty member who's affected, we both send them a permalink to the book, but we also send them a link to this page, hoping that if something happens in the faculty's forwarding of that permalink, that they'll also include this link to the student page, and all of our content is on here. And then we also link to a faculty search page via this main student page. This main student page has the most straightforward URL of any of our pages. So that's, this is really the gateway for all of our promotion. But then a big addition to our program recently has been our Moodle integration, which is our LMS. So, and I think this is the way that increasingly students discover the title. You know, maybe some faculty member may forward that email, but whether or not a student reads it can be a break in the chain. But if you're using a Moodle course, it's hard not to see this. This resides within the course page. Once you go to that course, it's there. This is an opt-out feature, so a professor can delete it, but they don't have to add it. It's there automatically. So this has been a hugely successful way to target both students and faculty to know about the title. And then finally, we've created this faculty-facing page. This uses the same publisher list that I was talking about for finding the matches based on that bookstore data. So now we've collected all of those publisher lists from publishers that we both have collections from or titles that we could buy. And they are all searched here. But then also searched here are open access books from projects like Knowledge Unlatched, OERs. We have the MARC records from that Open Textbook Network project out of the University of Minnesota. And so those are also are included here. So not only licensed, but material beyond that. This was also made in Drupal. The biggest challenge with it is that we would always like to have a more sophisticated search. You'll see that it's just title or keyword, and keyword is really just actually keywords within the title. or author's last name. It's hard for us to really get any sophistication beyond that because of how the publisher or title lists are. So that's probably, when we've done usability testing with faculty, that's been their biggest complaint about the search. But this is an example of what the results look like within there. So you can see that we both have titles that are available now. Those are ones that we already have in our collection, or ones that we will purchase with that prompting. So the next screen, faculty fill out some basic course information. And this is totally, if a faculty requests this for purchase, we will just go ahead and buy it. We don't need a demonstrated commitment that they will absolutely use this title as a primary textbook in their class or anything like that. We will use this, purchase it based on this. So this allows us, our program, to become more proactive. Faculty can now search and select. But I will say the majority of our program is still reactive, where we're relying on that bookstore list. Faculty are using the traditional textbook adoption process, submitting that to the bookstore, and we want the bookstore to remain a part of this too. And that is how we are getting the majority of our information still. But hopefully we'll continue to see growth in this faculty search tool. Teri?
Hello, I'm Teri Gallaway from the Louisiana Library Network. And my focus is going to be slightly different approach to the faculty outreach, since as a consortium we do not deal directly or routinely interact with faculty. So our emphasis at a consortium is on scalability, and particularly for small institutions and community colleges. So Emily and I are in the same state, we're on the same campus in fact, and the role of Lewis in many cases is to look at what the flagship has accomplished and try and find ways that we can roll this out for more than for those smaller institutions. So I'm going to talk about how we use professional development, advocacy, and expansion of the bookstore project to come up with some solutions, and talk about how we've streamlined the discovery, the purchasing, and the licensing of ebooks for our member institutions. So our member institutions are academic libraries. We're a consortium of both public and private colleges and universities throughout the state. We originated in 1992 through an agreement with the deans and directors at all the institutions. And we've created a cost-effective collaboration among the institutions for procurement of library technology and resources. So we have 9 central staff, and we report to the Louisiana Board of Regents as part of the statewide programs initiative. So much like these folks have discussed, our initiative, our ebook initiative, is grounded in an affordability initiative. Funding for this aspect of our project was tied to state funding that was directed specifically at student textbook affordability. So the only reason that we have money to buy ebooks is because our state wants our institutions to look at textbook affordability. So we kind of called the question on this initiative through a survey, statewide survey of Louisiana faculty, trying to figure out if the faculty who are kind of the change agents in this scenario, if they even cared about this project. And we did find that through surveying these faculty, 98% of them said that it was somewhat or greater of a priority to reduce the cost of textbooks, and that they were seeing the impacts, as Cheryl demonstrated in her screen, of students not having access to textbooks. So through our exploratory phase and based on some successful models that you've already heard about, we pursued 2 projects. The OER project, and our main project there is the Open Textbook Network that you have heard about already. And we are now completing a statewide alignment of our common course articulation. So over 250 courses are mapped from one institution to another, an articulation agreement. So we have gone ahead and taken those 250 courses and mapped them to the existing open textbooks in the OTN. But the other area, and what I'll focus on today, is how we're supporting the e-textbook piece, and we're calling this our curriculum-driven acquisitions project. So what is that? We call it, our shorthand is our CDA program, and the model for, in our program and for others, has demonstrated the ability to provide impressive savings opportunities to students based on ROI models of enrollments multiplied times a list price or other pricing as available. Typically we use list prices for new copies of books. But as Cheryl mentioned, as many as 60% of students are opting out of purchasing textbooks. So with the ROI that we are reporting, it's really a best case scenario of return on investment. And it shouldn't necessarily be looked at as lost sales. I know we have a lot of publishers in the audience and are listening to this and going, the library is scooping up all my course adoptions. It's really not a lot of the case because the students aren't buying the books. So you can't lose sales if they don't buy the books. So we're calling this the best case scenario of what we are saving students and looking at it as improved prospects for student learning outcomes. Currently, we are only looking at monographs and reference works, but there's a growing interest in our state and in many other states in looking at traditional textbook acquisitions, and I think there are a lot of publishers out there that are looking to make connections even within their own entities. Gale Cengage, for example, how can we connect the library side of things to the textbook side of things, and we're also interested in that. So we see a substantial return on investment through this project. It's very much selection dependent, so we try and provide data to our libraries to show them where is the best investment based on the pricing models that are available. Okay, so we are doing this, am I off a slide? I think I am. We're doing this via a Regents supplied large fund that we've put on a deposit account with one single ebook jobber, in this case YBP, because the individual site purchases from multiple publishers was going to be a disaster for us in terms of invoicing. So it also allows us to provide local decision-making potential. So we're not buying one book and then rolling it out for the whole state. We're allowing individual institutions to purchase individual copies of ebooks for use at their home location. And it really supports that ability to create unique collections. We are facilitating licensing wherever possible. We like to do statewide licensing. That's our preferred approach, but it has been confusing for our vendors when they get a request from a consortia that's not a request for consortia purchasing. So we've had to do a lot of back and forth to say we are the bill to entity and not the ship to entity in terms of physical materials. It's also been somewhat problematic in terms of pricing to do statewide licensing when pricing is based on FTE or Carnegie class, for example, and the extension of how we handle that with YBP. We are trying to leverage the availability of textbook adoption data, though, to identify greater opportunities for purchasing, very similar to the project that Emily is describing. And just some side commentary here, We have been calling these bookstore lists, but I do feel that it's important as we go forward that we consider this institutional data. The information about what textbooks are being used at a campus, while they have been reported directly to a bookstore, that's institutional data, and we either need to renegotiate those contracts to make sure that we're not scraping ISBNs out of a PDF file, or that we are collecting our own adoption data on a campus. Let's see. Okay. So making this work on a state level, where not all libraries are actively purchasing or even cataloging physical books. We have community and technical colleges in our state, for example. It's a challenge, and even fewer of those institutions are currently purchasing and managing ebooks. So it's really necessitated developing a new support infrastructure at our level, so that these institutions who are new customers to the ebook market know what they're getting into. And here are some of the ways that we're doing this. We have provided a licensing panel at our state users conference of about 200 librarians. We use our Learning with Lewis WebEx infrastructure to host webinars on specific topics. We have one coming up on licensing. We have Footprints help desk infrastructure to address those licensing and cataloging and all of those issues that come up with how does a library start buying ebooks when they've never bought an ebook before. And probably the most important thing is that we've developed this community of practice for our librarians in the state to understand this space and to develop a vocabulary and a working knowledge of how to talk to faculty, administrators, and on and on. So I think this is mine. Yes. So the other big piece that we're dealing with is the use of one-time funds for this project, and the need to look forward to sustainability is necessary. So this is where advocacy comes into place. To date, the funding at the state level has not been a cost shift back to the libraries. This is all new money. In a day when you, as a vendor, go to a library and you keep getting the words, there's no new money. This is new money. So I'm kind of making a plea to the publishers in the audience that this is a place where states are willing to invest, and we have two pieces of legislation. One is a response, Act 619, a response to higher education challenges, where our Louisiana Board of Regents specifically named Lewis as an entity in the state that is going to address textbook affordability and ideally put their money where their mouths are in terms of helping us move this from a one-time funding model to ongoing support. We've also been working with our Louisiana Library Association on a study group. It's the HCR 80 piece. How am I doing the time? Good. Okay. As well as a lot of campus advocacy. I will go out and visit campuses where they feel like they need an outside voice to come in and talk about the affordability issues. We have many people that are already empowered to do that on their own campuses, but they also appreciate having that outsider come in and talk about affordability initiatives. Oh, okay, all right. So the bookstore project, this is a lot of reiteration of what you've heard already. We request our data, though, through the Louisiana Board of Regents, and specifically through the General Counsel Office of the Louisiana Board of Regents. And we say, this is the format of the data that we want, and it needs to come to us in a data format like Excel that we can work with. And when we receive that data, we do a process of evaluating the owned collections to look for reserves, that could be utilized, and then we also look at potential purchases. And we're just now starting to look at ebook packages and how we could leverage purchasing packages. I can't say that we have the funding to do that, but we're trying to build a case statement that says these materials in these packages are already used and we should invest in them. So one of the outcomes, under the Charlotte principles, we were able to identify $160,000 in ebooks that could be purchased at 10 schools and save students as much as $1.5 million in textbook expenses. And looking at the potential for reuse, that goes up to $4.5 million over 3 semesters. The full report link is here, and I'm assuming these slides will be available at some point. And this is what that looks like. This is 10 institutions that we evaluated all of their bookstore data and looked for ebook opportunities as well as reserves opportunities. Our reserves figures are calculated on the Florida textbook data that something around 16% of students, I'm looking at Marcy because I know she knows this figure, about 16% of students rely on reserves materials. So we used that figure to estimate if 16% of students were relying on reserves, what are we saving them? Okay, so streamlining is kind of the final piece. We've done this licensing, this deposits account, we've done bookstore, and you've heard that reactive versus proactive approaches already. We're very much in reactive. How can we move to proactive? And this is where we bring in this portal idea. We are in discussion and have a test piece available that looks at the idea of taking a YBP profile, limited down to the ebooks that are sold in the way that we want to buy them, combining that with an OCLC cataloging plus piece to get the full metadata, and then pushing that through to EDS. So we're using the technology that our faculty are used to using, and this is what this looks like. This ends up being a faculty shopping environment where they can request, this is a state product, what they want to use in their classes, and they can push that back to the right campus to request a purchase. So just summing up, building capacity for these programs really requires better data, working on better technology, better community, how we work together, and lastly, communicating out this story so that the funding continues to flow to our projects so that we can have student savings, better student learning outcomes. From a library perspective, also increased campus relevancy and exposure is a very big challenge for libraries. And ideally lead to some library budget stability as well as expansions that we haven't seen, budget expansions that we haven't seen. Okay, no, I'm over, sorry. Questions?
Yes.
I got a question for you, Cheryl.
Sure.
You mentioned that OER textbooks are more customizable and flexible, and I'm wondering if you could explain that, because when I think of regular ebooks from a library, I mean, they're mostly at the chapter level, and I mean, you can pick and choose, you know, you don't have to use the entire book, and then you could, you know, pull in some journal articles, and so how do you see OERs as more customizable than that?
Well, with the Creative Commons license, so for example, we have a large required class for freshmen that's going to adopt a student success textbook. And they want to go through and instead of all references to your campus LMS, they want to add D2L since that's what we use on our campus. So we can go in and actually edit the text and put in links to not check with your academic advisor, but put in the link to actually the UA's academic advising site. So things like that. So yeah, we have other professors who have customized, you know, math textbooks and really taken advantage of the Creative Commons licenses.
Okay,
Yeah.
thanks.
Another thing I forgot to mention is that we formed kind of an action committee. We call it the OER Action Committee, but it could also be a textbook affordability action committee. And the partners are the bookstores, the library, our teaching and learning center, which is called our Office of Instruction and Assessment. The Disability Resource Center is an important partner to bring them in. Central IT, the instructional technologists in our online learning center. When they're going through a course design, that's a great opportunity to incorporate either OER or library licensed ebooks, since they're redesigning the curriculum anyway. So that's been a good faculty outreach tool.
Hi, I'm Mitchell Davis from WLS. First of all, that was an amazing presentation. You guys are doing fantastic work. I had a couple of questions. I think you guys are spot on with the students don't care whether it's OER or licensed by the library. And I think that's a critical part of this. So when you were talking about giving the professors sort of a button to say order this ebook, you said something, and I know both you guys are on the same campus. Are you limiting that to buying ebooks that are actually going to have the ability to be widespread use? I heard you say that you're going to start to limit your catalog to buying things just the way you want to buy things. Is that in place yet? How amenable have the vendors been to that? Because that sends purchasing down a completely different path. So I was wondering if you guys could talk about that. And also for you Arizona folks, I don't know if you know readingarizona.org. It's a project we do with the state library, but it's about 1,000 completely open books within the state of Arizona from University Presses and a bunch of other publishers. So I'd be really interested to provide you guys that list
Yes,
so that you can
please.
balance it against your free materials.
Yeah,
So I'll
that'd be
give
great.
you guys afterwards and send that.
Great.
So for us, for the portal model, if your book's not offered on an unlimited license, it's not in the collection. And on the other side, if a site comes to Lewis and shows us a return on investment for a 3-user copy, we suggest that they don't provide a 3-user copy for more than 30 students in the class is kind of the figure we're using. And we did go out and survey people that had used the 3-user. We surveyed the students that were provided a 3-user copy to ask them about the experience. And they gave the service a grade of an A overall, although a couple folks did note that it was not available at the exact time that I wanted, but it was okay. So that's kind of, and I think you won't do 3-user at all.
Right, so ours are all just unlimited, and that does exclude, like we have Wiley titles in there, but any Wiley textbook is not included typically in there, or any book where Wiley Plus is used. So we may have faculty who in theory would be interested in a free textbook of their Calc 1 textbook through the library, but that it's if they're using that traditional textbook and not really interested in an OER, then it's just not something that at this point we really can provide access to, although we are sort of piloting some library purchased license for a class of a traditional textbook that doesn't use the homework management system at all, a Wiley book, but that's just one pilot project.
That's great. I mean, it is moving where you guys are spending the money though, which the publishers eventually will have to pay attention.
Hi, Lori Baumgartner with Gardner-Webb University. Can each of you speak to whether you're budgeting a certain amount for this initiative, or whether what it has cost you, so I can have some sense of how you're allocating funds?
So I guess we spend generally around 15 to 20,000 a fiscal year on it. That's coming from our student fee actually. So we have a library student fee.
Over 3 years?
No, that's per year.
Okay.
Yeah, so we bought those large packages from Springer, Project Muse, Wiley. That costs us a lot of money, and we try to upgrade every year for that new book list. And then we also do buy books title by title when we can. And so, like I said, sometimes those are $1,000. Elsevier title by title books are over $1,000 sometimes. Other ones, a JSTOR book might be $45. And so I think we set aside about $10,000 per semester for that title by title. And sometimes that's, I think it's usually a little less than that, but sometimes it's more. So that's.
Yeah, I should say that 10,000 that we do, I mean, similar, 20,000 a year is the new purchases. Which interestingly, it seems to be staying the same each year, like it's not going up or down. But we also draw on the stuff we already have through packages.
And then if I can too, that book, the Wiley purchase, this is such a compelling case, I believe this is the case, we were able to get some funds from academic affairs for that pilot project, because they really are, I believe that's the case. The budgeting part is sometimes beyond what I'm involved in, but they find all of this really compelling. Did you want to say something about the budget part? Yeah.
Oh, I was just gonna say, they're big schools, UNCG, so I know. I would say, suggest if you want to start small, try one of the classes that have the most people in it to see, kind of gear toward those, just to see what you can maybe buy, that way first.
Yeah, I would say at our smaller schools that we identified probably $3,000, $4,000, $5,000 in purchases per semester. I mean, and you can look individually at the courses, but you don't have to buy all of it. You can look at some of it, and the return on investment just for a couple $1,000s sometimes is $20,000, $30,000, $40,000, and it's compelling enough statement to get reinvestments from other places on campus, including the departmental investments.
Teri, I just wanted to ask you really quickly, you mentioned profiling with YBP.
Yeah.
So how,
It's very much
Not-
like a DDA, PDA profile.
is that in Gobi?
It's in Gobi.
Okay.
It's a service, and so you're setting up a profile for
Right.
what books you would have gotten on a notification service.
Okay.
If you were doing like an approval plan.
So you
or
can
a-
do certain publishers, unlimited only, from certain platforms?
Kind of.
Okay.
We're including the EBSCO host ebook content in our portal when it's unlimited. So there's a little bit of behind the scenes work that strips out things that don't have an unlimited component.
I think we.
We're at time.
Yeah, sorry, but
Sorry.
come up and ask us after.